Okay/K/, I put some thought into this and I've decided to share my WTF/nope/Innawood story with you. I wasn't going to do it, but after seeing a few other threads with people discussing weird stuff, I figured I might as well, and maybe I'll get a solution for my one and only unanswered question. What I'm about to tell you is the 100% honest truth, and I'll try and be as detailed as possible. Firstly, some brief background info on me, which I only offer so you might understand my behavior and mindset. I am in my early 30s, I'm an active duty Marine who's been in the Corps for over 15 years, a GYSGT, I have quite a bit of training along with real-world combat experience. I am a rational, logical, and skeptical person who does not believe in the supernatural or spiritual, and I'm a long-time lurker here at /K/ and 4chan in general. So this all took place in the Californian Mojave Desert, at a place called the Joshua Tree National Park, 3 weeks ago over the Thanksgiving holiday. I often go out on short camping trips, and this time I was out for one night of camping before the weather got too cold to tolerate it. This is a huge desert area, with almost no vegetation other than scrub brush and cacti, large mountains with very flat valleys, and hardly any wildlife to be seen. I go out there to do some hiking and to get away from gadgets for a while and relax. The sunsets, sunrises, and starry nights are really amazing. When I go out alone, I leave my wife a map of where I'm going on my trip identical to one I also carry, along with a set timeline. I usually take a ruck with Duraflame log, so I don't have to burn the already sparse vegetation, basic survival gear with food and water, and I carry a Ruger 77/357. It's a bolt action .357 rifle that uses 5-round rotary magazines, of which I take 3 more. I carry this because it's a national park and no one gives me a hard time about it. It's reliable, very accurate, light, cheap to shoot, and powerful enough to kill a coyote from 100 yards if I need to. The coyotes out here aren't deadly, but they are pretty damn fearless and are used to people, so it's a necessity. I almost always camp on the large rock outcroppings now, because one time I woke up and saw no less than 6 coyotes standing in the dark just outside the firelight watching me, pacing quietly. It was actually kind of neat to be so close to them, and we sat watching each other for a while, until one started edging in too close and I had to shoo them away with a warning shot. Anyway, this particular night was uneventful aside from the coyotes making a ton of obnoxious noise around 0400. It was also pretty damn chilly, and since I was awake already I started heading back before the dawn even broke. I can make pretty good time and distance on foot, so my campsite was about 4 miles out, farther than most people bother to venture. In fact, I've never ran into anyone that far out now that I think about it, even though it's not that far. So I'm heading back, and I'm hiking back down a large hill that has boulders and crevices all along it. Nothing too crazy, definitely not rock climbing or anything. I stay away from dangerous areas since I'm alone. I get no farther than 400 or 500 yards from my actual campsite, and there lying on the ground in front of me I see a blue and white knit beanie cap, the kind with the tassels on the sides. I stopped and started scanning the area, but I saw nothing out of the ordinary. I called out with a hello, and got no reply. I walked over and reached down to pick it up, and as soon as I touched it I heard a faint hello off to my left. I stood up quickly, but saw nothing. Walking further to my left I saw a large crevice in the hill that went down about 30 or 40 feet and curved hard to the right among a few very large boulders. I couldn't really see anything down there because it was still too dark and the angle wasn't good, but as soon as I had got a look down into it I heard a much louder hello come up from below. My mind clicked into gear and I thought, shit, someone got lost and probably just spent a long cold night trapped down there. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Do you need help? I called down. The voice came back, please, come help me. I realized, holy shit, that was a child's voice, or it sounded like it. So I tossed my pack and rifle on the deck and started yanking out some 550 cord as I yelled down, Don't worry, I'm going to help you. Stay calm. I tied a big loop off around a stone near me, and then wrapping it around my arm I came quickly back to the edge. I started to lean forward to find the best way down when several things happened. I yelled down, "Stay calm," and then immediately got a whiff of the most awful smell I've ever smelled as I leaned over. Imagine what a long dead animal rotting in a mud puddle on a hot day would smell like. Just like that. In the gloom below I saw a slight movement, just a shape, but far larger than any child could have been. And then I heard the child's voice, "Please, come help me." I froze. That phrase had sounded exactly the same as before, and I mean exactly, in tone, inflection, cadence, everything. It was so exact that that's what made it weird. A few seconds went by as I hesitated, then again from below exactly as before, "Please, come help me." Now, I don't scare easily, but I was suddenly overcome with unexplained fear. Not a fear I've ever felt before, like an adrenaline pumping kind you'd feel from a car accident or firefight, but a gut-wrenching, predator and I'm the prey type feeling that made me panic. I went into full flight mode. I reeled back, scooting on my hands and feet, and grabbed my rifle, panting. I remember thinking to myself, this isn't enough, I should have brought my M1A, and a second later I heard scraping and scrabbling sounds, coming up the crevice. I stood up and fucking ran. Left all my gear behind, just rifle in hand, right down the hill. I heard panting, huffing coming from behind me, and then loud as shit please. "Come help me." I was sprinting in the dawn, nearly hysterical with fear. And then I was back, through the park entrance, and straight to the office, where I started banging on the door, hell I was kicking it even, and yelling for help. A park ranger came from around the side of the building and told me to knock it the fuck off. Thinking about it now I realize he had his hand on his pistol and I very nearly got myself shot with all my bonkers behavior. Mind racing, I told him the only thing I could think of that would make sense, I was coming back from my campsite and someone attacked me and chased me. He looks at me and says, "Who?" I tell him I have no idea, I never got a look, and that I could take him to where it happened where all my gear was. So after a brief chat with another ranger, this old fella and I get into his ATV and head back to the hill. We get up to the crevice in the rock and sure as shit, my gear is still there with the cord still wrapped around the stone like I left it. But no one else is there, and no blue and white beanie either. The ranger gets a little pissed, and asks me if I had been drinking or doing drugs, and after returning to the office and taking my statement he tells me, "Maybe next time you come out here you might want to leave the rifle at home, okay buddy?" So that's it. I headed home. Took a shower and tried to figure it out. I decided that either some seriously fucked up kids had just pranked the shit out of me, or that I had almost been robbed and killed by some tweakers in a desert hiking ambush. The only problem with these that I can't figure out is that if either one is true, then what was that fucking awful smell all about? Honestly, I don't know California legends that well, but I'll be the first to say it, Skinwalker. Basically, /K/Omrad, you met something that eats people. And a skeptic who thinks you're a 5150 case. This means, never return to that area again. 1. Because the ranger might try to get charges on you for some reason, and 2, because whatever that was, might remember you and decide to deliberately hunt you. I'm going to look into this. But it's really hard to believe it, even after living through this. Also, my statement was actually filed as an actual report at the ranger's office, and is on public record if anyone wants to verify that I'm telling the truth. Although I may have left out some of the more interesting parts of the encounter in the report, for obvious reasons. 29 Palms, are you an instructor out there gunny? I miss bouldering at Joshua Tree and those were definitely some of the most beautiful night skies I've ever seen. Kind ve haunting to think I was camping, and drinking, in Skinwalker territory. Yes, I'm an instructor with a year left to go out here at 29 stumps, but I'd rather not get too detailed here on 4chan about my specifics. Okay, now, to people who say nothing crazy happens out here in this desert or the park, you obviously aren't a local who's lived here their whole life. I've lived in Yucca Valley my whole life, and I can tell you that in these super tiny towns there is several of cases of people getting lost or going missing every year out here that you don't hear about. Usually tourists types. It's not hard to keep it out of the news when your only real news outlet is a couple of town papers run by 4 or 5 people each. It would be really bad for what tourism we have if word got out that people were going missing out here regularly. What usually happens is that people misjudge distances in the desert, thinking things are closer than they really are, and then the dryness dehydrates them quickly. Here's something that happened to someone I personally knew about 4 years ago in this same desert that Up was in. A kid I went to high school with was apparently going through a rough time and he decided to commit suicide. This guy drove out, parked his car, left a note in it, and headed out into the desert. A couple of days later they finally found some of the guy's clothes and backpack with weed still in it, but never found the guy. Now if you weren't friends with the family or locals from here you'd never know these details, but the news never said a peep about it. Not even a boy missing spot. Now this was intentional, but my point is the same people get lost and go missing out here more often than you'd expect. Okay, I'm going to take the time to read up on this stuff. Right now I think I need to take a break. Rethinking about this over and over again makes me feel a bit nauseous. I will say that there is some weird shit out here in the desert, plenty of meth head tweakers, old abandoned mine shafts, and hell, they even permanently shut down part of our training area a few months ago because they found another Native American site full of artifacts during a live engagement. Hi. This is my first time visiting and posting on your website and involves something someone posted to your website. I found this picture on a gun/survivalist web forum I frequent. I asked about its origins and was directed here. I am a SGT in the Marines stationed at 29 Palms, and I'm convinced that I have worked for and with the gunny that wrote this. I've known him for a few years and he is a very down-to-earth, smart guy. A real outdoorsman. We did 2 deployments together, the last one I was actually in his platoon as a corporal a couple of years back. I know he does a lot of camping and stuff, so about 2 months ago I asked him where would be a good place to go camping out here, and he did something really unusual. He took me to the side and told me to never, under any circumstances, stay out overnight in the national park. He made me promise I wouldn't and said it would be unsafe for me, my wife, or anyone else. When I asked why, he said he had a run-in with a tweaked-out meth head over the Thanksgiving holiday last year. Well, I know he's been out there alone several times in the last few months by himself over the weekends, so I asked him why he'd go out if it was dangerous, and he got this weird far-off look and said, "I'm hunting that monster down before someone gets killed." I was like, wow, really gunny? And he snaps back like a guy having a flashback and kind of fake laughs, saying he won't actually kill the meth head, just scare him. And then he left, and I forgot about it. Okay, so here's the fucked up part. Are you guys following the news? If you do, you'll know a Marine's wife went missing out here last month. On Friday, June 28th, the girl Erin Corwin, Google her name, who was nearly 2 months pregnant, told her husband she was heading to Joshua Tree National Park to check out scenic places for her and her mother, who was expected to arrive the following week, to visit. She never returned home and her husband called police the following day. They have searched hundreds of square miles of around the park and found nothing of her. That same Friday afternoon around 18:30 I ran into Gunny at the gas station. He was getting gas and was wearing non-issue desert camo. The back of his truck was heaped up with gear, sleeping bag, tent, ropes, bound wood, ammo cases, etc. And I was like, damn, hey guns, are you going to war or what? Then he did something that kinda scared the shit out of me. He looked me straight in the eye, stared at me for a few seconds like he didn't recognize me, and then says you. Get you and your wife back to your house and don't you dare fucking leave it again until tomorrow morning. I'm fucking serious. Do you understand me, Marine? I said yes. He put up the pump and drove up Utah Trail Road to the national park. I'll be honest, I was pissed that he talked to me like that, and that he'd try to tell me what to do over weekend libo without an explanation, so me and the wife got back in the car and went about our day as we planned. So that next Monday I don't see Gunny at work. I didn't think anything of it. On Tuesday he comes in and the left side of his face is bruised up real bad. Black eye and everything. When I ask, he says he tried to leave the park late Saturday night and he totaled his truck when he accidentally drove it into a gully. I asked him why he told me to go home the way he did and he stares at me blankly and says he remembered seeing me but didn't remember talking to me. Then he said he didn't want to talk about it and just walked off. He went on leave the next day for 2 weeks. Once that girl Erin was announced as missing, I know he was one of the volunteers that helped search for her while he was on leave. When he came back to work on July the 16th, he was like a totally different guy. Doesn't talk to anyone anymore. Just tells us what to do for the day but then keeps to himself. Doesn't smile, laugh, chew anyone's ass, nothing. Others have noticed too. Other people know he totaled his truck, but only I know about our camping conversation. And after reading the picture I've attached here, I'm starting to think something really fucked up is going on. So that's it? What do you think is going on, and what should I do? Hey guys, it's me again. For the record, your forum here is kinda hard to use. There's very little organization. Anyway. So I talked to Gunny today. I started off with a couple of offhand questions about things from the past, like, hey Gunny, do you remember that guy on our deployment in 2012 that we had to send home because of a pelvic fracture when we hit our first IED? Do you remember his name? He looked at me for a few seconds each time and then says, yeah, it was Crawford. Neil Crawford. Then he walked off. He knew the answers to my questions, he just seemed really out of it. So once I felt pretty confident that he was still himself, I asked a couple of buddies to hang outside the office while I went and talked to him. This was about an hour ago. I walked in, sat down, and I told him I saw his online post about what happened last Thanksgiving. Then I asked him what really happened when he went to the park that weekend a month ago. He stares at me and says, what I'm about to tell you is the one and only time I'm going to talk about this to anyone. There is something evil in that desert. For the last few months I've done my best to try to find and kill it and keep it away from the campgrounds and people there. That Friday I felt like I was being pulled into that desert. I knew something bad was about to happen. Well, it did. I almost got myself killed. Now that girl is gone for good and in the end I couldn't do anything about it. That's all I'm ever going to say about it. Go tell your friends online that if you want, but I won't talk about it again. And tell people to stay away from there. It was a pretty uncomfortable conversation. I thanked him and left. Now I'm posting from my phone. I'm not sure what to do next. I'm thinking about telling some of the guys about this and trying to get a few of us armed and out there this weekend to try and get this person or thing that lives there. What are your thoughts? Nigga, you better have a fucking battalion if you want to take this thing on. I've been in Cali deserts my whole life and there are just things that you don't do. Yeah, well, Guns was by himself. If there are 4 or 5 of us out there I think we'd be good. I'm in 0331, and most of my friends are from my weapons platoon and we know our shit. Plus I'm sure that we have enough personally owned firepower to get the job done if needed. I just need to read more about this and figure out what we're up against before I do anything else. Buddy, if you do that. If you do. A personal request from me is to become a trifig, which just means you get a name on the board and we know it's you. Also, if you manage to kill it, mention how much firepower and if explosives were used, homemade or otherwise.